My name is Brooklyn Chase, and this is how one cold email ended my 6 years of dedication. I still remember the familiar ding from my computer screen that Monday morning. I had just set down my cup of coffee, and the mist outside my office window in Denver hadn't lifted yet. The sun was barely rising behind the glass towers, bringing with it a new day filled with hope. I opened my inbox, and then everything froze. Please clear your desk by 5 p.m. today. Human Resources will guide you through the separation process. Thank you, Brooklyn, for your time with Onyx Freight Solutions. I stared at those lines, my vision blurred. Not from sadness, but fury. A tight, suffocating kind of anger. 3 days. Just 3 days of bereavement leave to bury my father. 3 days that had been approved by none other than my supervisor, Mr. Martin Renshaw. And this is how they repaid me? The leather chair beneath me creaked as I leaned back, trying to take a deep breath. The 14th floor office was still empty. Most people hadn't arrived yet. I had come in earlier than usual that day. I wanted to catch up on work after a few days off. I was ready to return. I thought I'd find peace by throwing myself back into my tasks. I was wrong. Aerobic, regional team lead for the Western Division at Onyx Freight, never imagined I'd be kicked out the door by such a heartless email. I was 32. 6 years ago, I joined the company with nothing but drive, building the highest performing team in the region. We had led revenue growth across the entire system for 2 consecutive years. And now, I was discarded like a name crossed off a spreadsheet. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into Martin's office demanding an explanation. I opened my phone camera, took a screenshot of the email, and forwarded it to my personal address. Then I stood up. Every movement was slow, deliberate. I began packing my things. The little succulent plant my team gave me last Christmas, I wrapped it carefully in newspaper, the team photo from our fall retreat in Yosemite. I gently removed it from its frame. Handwritten thank you cards from young staff I had mentored. I placed them neatly in the box. In 10 minutes, my 6 years had been packed into one worn-out cardboard box. The elevator doors opened. Jenna from accounting walked in. She froze when she saw me taping up the box. "Brooklyn, what are you doing?" I looked up, lips pressed tight. "I've been let go." "What?" Jenna gasped. "Why?" I set the tape roll down and looked her straight in the eyes. "Because I took 3 days off to bury my father." The answer turned her face from confused to outraged. "Martin knew why you took time off? He was the one who approved it." He did, but apparently, people like saying one thing and doing another. I folded the tissue around the succulent. Jenna fell silent, but her eyes burned with anger. Still, I just gave a faint smile. "Don't worry, I won't cause a scene. But I won't forget this." I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but I knew one thing. Justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from true friends, and one right decision made at what seems like the worst moment. I was sealing up the last box when the elevator doors slid open again. This time, it was Shane, the logistics manager, the same guy who'd stayed late with me for 2 straight weeks to finalize a Western Region client contract. He froze in the middle of the lobby, staring at me as I tucked my top team lead second quarter glass plaque into my old coat. "Brooklyn, what's going on?" I looked up, calm but unable to hide the bitterness. "I was just let go, Shane. Via email. For daring to take time off for my father's funeral." Silence. In those 3 seconds, I watched his whole body go rigid. He repeated the question, this time almost growling. "You mean Martin fired you? After everything you've done for this team?" I nodded. Without waiting for me to say anything else, Shane pulled out his phone. Not to make a call, but to snap a photo of the email I showed him. "This isn't going to be quiet, Brooklyn." I sighed. I didn't want to become the center of attention in the office. But unfortunately, I wasn't the only one who cared about justice. Within less than half an hour, 6 more people entered the room one by one. Lena, Cole, Amanda, Travis, Sienna, and Devin. They were my core team, the very people who had helped me build the Western Operations Department from a struggling branch into a region, contributing nearly 28% of national revenue. Each of them reacted differently to the news, but they all shared one thing in common: outrage. "I can't believe this," Lena said loudly, her eyes burning red. "You just wrapped up the Omaha project less than 10 days ago. The whole department was praised for its performance." "I'd bet anything Martin is scared of you outshining him," Amanda muttered. "It's obvious, isn't it?" Cole stayed quiet, his hands clenched, staring at the box I was taping shut. Travis stepped into the hallway and called someone. I overheard bits of the conversation. "This thing with Brooklyn this morning, we can't let it slide. Get legal involved. All of them." When everyone gathered around me in a silent, instinctive circle, I saw clearly what Onyx Freight was about to lose. A team that had been loyal to the core. And then, as if fate had scripted the timing, Martin walked in. He was dressed sharply as always. Shirt crisply ironed, dark blue tie perfectly matched with his new glasses. His eyes scanned the group surrounding me, then landed on the cardboard box on the table. "What's going on here?" His voice was flat and cold. I didn't get a chance to answer. Devin stepped forward. "We want to know why Brooklyn was let go this morning." Martin glanced at me, then smirked. "This was a difficult but necessary decision. We're adjusting staffing to optimize operations. We're in a fiercely competitive period, and the company needs people who prioritize their work." "Prioritize work?" Sienna echoed, full of disbelief. "She took 3 days off to bury her father." "You signed the leave request yourself." Martin's expression tightened. He crossed his arms. "I understand everyone's emotions, but the truth is, Onyx Freight needs people who can adapt quickly. No one is irreplaceable." I gripped the handle of my box a little tighter. 100 sharp words rushed through my head. But I knew that the right kind of silence could be more powerful than 1,000 angry outbursts. Lena spoke up, her voice trembling. "If this is how you treat someone who was the heart of this region, then who's safe here?" No one replied. Martin checked his watch. "Everyone should return to their desks. This decision came from higher up. Don't get yourselves in trouble over emotions." Then he walked away, leaving behind a heavy silence thick with repressed fury. I looked around at the faces of people now furious on my behalf and on their own. They didn't say anything else, only nodded quietly, solemnly, like an unspoken promise. I picked up the box and walked out of the workspace I had called home for the last time. But I knew this wasn't the end. No one pushes me down without waking up the strongest part of who I am. I left the main floor with my cardboard box in hand, walking the hallway toward Human Resources. Every step felt like it landed on memories. 6 years of them. This wasn't just a job. It had been a chapter of my life. The HR office sat at the end of the hall, tucked in a quieter corner. I knocked gently 3 times. The door opened, and the HR rep, Rebecca Liu, a newer face in the company, greeted me with a soft smile and slightly uneasy eyes. "Hi, Brooklyn. Please, come in." I sat down on the cushioned chair across from her desk. The room was small and bright, but couldn't hide the chill of decisions no one liked to carry out. Rebecca sat down and opened a pale blue folder. "I know this isn't an easy situation, and I'm really sorry about what happened," she said sincerely. "I'm sorry too," I replied, gently setting the box beside my chair. She slid a stack of papers toward me, about 10 pages thick. "This is the official termination paperwork. It includes the dismissal notice, details of the severance package, and the related legal clauses." I flipped through each page. 2 weeks' pay, no extended health coverage, a non-disclosure agreement, and, just as I expected, a non-compete clause, prohibiting me from working for any direct competitor of Onyx Freight for 6 months within a 150-mile radius. That's pretty harsh, I said quietly, turning another page. This feels like a packet for someone who quit without notice, not for someone terminated after 3 days of bereavement leave. Rebecca bit her lower lip, hesitating slightly. I understand how you feel, but I'm just the one delivering the documents forwarded from the legal department. I unlocked my phone and pulled up the screenshot of the termination email, along with the approved leave request from none other than Martin Renshaw. I set the phone on the desk for her to read. Rebecca looked at the screen. Within seconds, the uncertainty on her face turned into outright shock. The termination email? No meeting, no prior warning, and the leave was officially approved? I nodded. She looked at me for another long moment, then opened her laptop and began typing. I need to check back with legal, and possibly with the regional HR director. Do what you need to do, I said, leaning back in the chair. I'm not looking to cause trouble, I just want to be treated fairly. Rebecca nodded and left the room. I sat alone. Morning sunlight filtered through the frosted glass, casting a soft glow on the wall where a simple framed photo hung. A quiet road stretching through a pine forest, with a small caption beneath it. Sometimes the detour is the path. That line made me smile faintly. 15 minutes later, Rebecca returned. Her expression remained professional, but I could sense the unease behind the mask. I spoke with our interim legal team and they'll need more time to review the situation, especially because the original employment contract doesn't clearly address termination during approved bereavement. So in other words, they're not sure they had legal grounds to do this? She nodded. I can't officially confirm, but it seems this falls outside the standard protocol. I held her gaze for a few seconds. I don't want to sue, but I won't sign anything that binds me, especially if the company already broke their own commitments. Rebecca lowered her voice. I understand. Honestly, I don't think this was the right way to handle it, but, I don't have a say in these decisions. I gave a soft smile. But at least you had the courage to say it. Thank you, Rebecca. I stood up, picked up my phone and the folder. If legal has any response, they can email me. For now, I'm going to go find my own detour. As I turned to leave, I caught something in Rebecca's eyes. For the first time, clear respect. Not because of my title, but because of how I was leaving. Calm, firm, and unwilling to let anyone strip me of my dignity. I had just stepped into the parking lot when my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lena. Brooklyn, Martin's in a closed-door meeting with Paula. You're not the only one who sees how wrong this was. I looked up at the blue sky above. A new day, no longer belonging to Onyx Freight, but maybe to something bigger, something better. And I was ready for it. I had just arrived home when my phone rang. The name on the screen made me pause. Frank Dalton, CEO of Crimson Haulage. The biggest competitor Onyx Freight had always tried to undercut. We had met at a logistics conference last year, and he had personally invited me for coffee after the keynote. I politely declined at the time, still loyal to Onyx, but I remembered his eyes when he said, "If the day ever comes when Onyx no longer deserves you, call me. I know talent when I see it." I answered the phone. Brooklyn Chase speaking. Frank's voice was calm and deep, just like always. I just heard the news. I didn't expect them to end a chapter like that. I gave a slight chuckle. The logistics world isn't as big as people think. News spreads fast, like a summer storm. Yeah, it surprised me too. But I guess every ending opens up a new opportunity. Frank paused for a few seconds, then got straight to the point. I'm not calling to offer sympathy. I'm calling with an offer. Crimson is expanding into the Southwest region, and we need someone with vision. Someone who knows how to build a team and understands the market better than anyone else. I narrowed my eyes, my heart beating a little faster. Are you talking about a regional director role? Not just regional director. I want you to help us reshape the entire regional operation. From strategy to staffing, you'll have full authority to lead. And if you agree, The contract will be ready by the end of this week. I stepped out onto my porch and took a deep breath of the crisp, early fall air. You know I have a non-compete with Onyx, right? I do. Our legal team reviewed it. Their clause is overly broad and wouldn't hold up in court, especially after they terminated you following approved bereavement leave. You didn't break any rules, and if they try to stir up trouble, we've got your back. I stayed quiet for a moment. The logical part of me urged caution, but the other part, the part that had been hurt, discarded, was done hesitating. I have one condition, I said slowly. Name it. I want to choose my team. If the people who helped me build the Western operations at Onyx want to come along, I want them to be given fair consideration. No favoritism, but no roadblocks either. Frank didn't hesitate a second. Deal. If they're good enough for you to trust, they'll be interviewed like anyone else. Personally, I believe if they're willing to follow you, they're more than worth it. I crossed my arms over my chest. I felt a rush of energy down my spine, not out of revenge, but from finally being trusted the right way. I'll send over my resume by email, and I'd like to meet in person to discuss the details. Excellent. I'll have my assistant arrange the earliest possible meeting. And Brooklyn? Yes? Thank you for not letting them put out your light. The call ended. I stood there, watching the sun dip behind Denver's rooftops. The sun was gone beyond the mountains, but the sky remained vibrant for a long while after. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Sienna. Travis said he's pulling all your data from the system. Onyx is in chaos, and apparently, some people are starting to ask why someone like you was let go. I smiled, not out of bitterness, but because I knew anything that's truly strong won't collapse from a single gust of wind. I opened my laptop and began drafting the email to Frank, attaching my resume. The latest version, now updated with the achievement, led 21% growth in the Western region in just 8 months. Then, I opened another tab, my core contacts, Lena, Cole, Amanda, Travis, Devin, Sienna, and Shane. Before I could hit send, a message from Lena popped up. If you've got a plan, just know this. We're still with you, wherever you go. I typed back 3 words. There is one. 3 days after the call with CEO Frank Dalton of Crimson Hollage, I received an email from their HR department confirming interview appointments. Not for me, but for 7 candidates who had submitted their applications all at once. Each name was clearly listed. Lena Howell, Travis McLean, Amanda Diaz, Cole Jenkins, Sienna Brooks, Shane Kelly, Devon Park. I sat frozen in front of the screen for several seconds. I never told them to leave. In fact, I hadn't officially told anyone I was even considering joining Crimson. But some relationships don't need an invitation. Just one act of fairness is enough for the right people to show up. That afternoon, I chose a cafe tucked beneath golden maple trees on the west side of the city, somewhere I knew no one from Onyx ever went. And sure enough, one by one, they arrived. First Shane, then Amanda and Travis, followed by the rest. No one said anything right away. We just sat, ordered drinks like it was an old friends reunion. Finally, Lena spoke. You knew we'd do this, didn't you? I set my cappuccino down, looked her in the eyes. Honestly, I wasn't sure. I thought you'd all put your careers first. We did, Cole said evenly. And that's exactly why we left. Devin crossed his arms and added, after they tossed you out over 3 days of bereavement leave, every value we believed in at Onyx vanished. I don't see a future there anymore, Amanda said softly. If someone like you could be treated that way, who's next? Shane looked at me, his eyes firm. You built something we were proud to be part of. You created a space where people felt heard, respected. You don't need to ask us, Brooklyn. We're following you because we believe in who you are. My throat tightened, not just from emotion, but from the realization that I had mattered. Not just in quarterly reports, but in real people's lives. Crimson received your resumes. They're scheduling interviews, but I need you to understand one thing. I paused, meeting each gaze carefully. This will be a new environment. Different pressures, different scale. And if we're building from scratch again, there will be no special treatment, no shortcuts. Sienna smiled lightly. We're not looking for favors, we just want a place where fairness isn't a luxury. The table fell silent for a beat, a silence full of shared resolve. One more thing, Travis said, glancing around before pulling a folder from his backpack. These are copies of internal guides we developed with you. No client data, just the frameworks you created. I think you should have them. It's your work. I flipped through a few pages. They were the operational playbooks I'd written by hand, updated with every campaign. Legally irrelevant, but foundational to the model I'd built. And now, a starting point I could refine. Thank you, Travis. But I want to be clear. Anyone leaving Onyx should do it for themselves, not for me. If you're pressured with harsh non-compete clauses, I want you to think it through carefully. Cole chuckled softly. They forgot one thing. We're not fresh grads. We know our rights. And we've already lawyered up. Devin nodded. And if it comes down to it, Crimson's legal team runs circles around Onyx. They're not amateurs. I looked around the table, filled with gratitude and resolve. Then let's do this. But this time not to prove we're capable, but to prove you can succeed and still be decent. That night, I got an unexpected call from an unknown number. Is this Brooklyn Chase? I'm Kara Lindell, head of legal at Crimson. I just wanted to confirm something. Your whole team is currently in the application review phase. But if you have any inside information about how Onyx handles HR matters, feel free to share privately. It could help our legal department if any action arises. I smiled. I'm not looking for revenge. But if telling the truth stops them from hurting someone else, I'm willing to share. Every detail. I was in a conference room at Crimson College, sitting with Frank and the regional strategy team, discussing expansion into Colorado, when my phone rang. The caller ID read Paula Brennan, Western Regional Director of Onyx Freight. I stared at the screen for a moment, then signaled to Frank to pause. He nodded and walked over to pour more coffee. I stepped into the hallway and answered. Brooklyn speaking. A brief silence. Hello, Brooklyn. This is Paula Brennan. I was hoping to speak with you directly if you have a few minutes. Her voice was still professional, but I could hear the strained calm in her tone, the voice of someone trying to steer a ship that's already veering off course. I'm busy. If it's important, just say it. Paula took a deep breath on the other end. I know this is unexpected, but I just received 7 resignation letters, all from people who used to be on your team. I didn't respond. She continued. They all listed their reason as loss of trust in the company's leadership direction. Brooklyn, this is spiraling out of control. I leaned against the glass hallway wall, looking down at the parking lot where Crimson employees were wheeling their bikes home. A quiet afternoon. What do you need from me? I want to invite you back as Regional Operations Manager for the Western Division. We're prepared to offer a 15% salary increase, along with a re-signing bonus, and I personally want to apologize for how everything unfolded. I let out a quiet laugh. Not bitter, just detached. Something about the offer felt utterly out of place. Paula, I think you should call Martin. He's the one who fired me. With no reason, no warning. Her voice dropped. I know. And I have to be honest, he acted without my authorization. I was in a leadership summit at our Chicago headquarters when he claimed it was an urgent matter and rushed the termination. I only found out after it was done. I narrowed my eyes. So, you didn't approve it? Not at all. And that's why we've launched an internal investigation. Legal is involved. Martin is currently suspended. There was a heavy pause on the line. I understand if you're angry. Honestly, I was furious when I learned he acted alone. But, Brooklyn, I'm trying to make this right. The entire region is off balance. Major clients are calling, asking about you, and if you come back, you'll have full authority to rebuild your team." I took a deep breath, not because I was tempted, but to make sure my response would be crystal clear. "Paula, do you know what I needed most in that moment? When I got that termination email? A kind word, a simple, 'I'm sorry for your loss.' Some sign that I was still a human being who had just lost her father. But I got nothing. No message, no phone call, just a cold email, like a weekly report being filed." My voice dropped lower. "So if you want me to return, you'll need something you don't have. A time machine. To go back to that moment and do the right thing." Silence. Then Paula finally spoke, her voice full of regret. "I understand, truly. I do. But I hope if you ever need anything in the future, you won't hesitate to call. I've always respected you, Brooklyn." "I'll keep that in mind, but I need to get back to my meeting." I ended the call and stepped back into the conference room. Frank was reviewing the planning charts. He looked up as I entered. "Good news or bad?" "Both," I replied. "Onyx is a mess. And they want me back." He raised an eyebrow, teasing. "Should we bump our offer to 20% to keep you?" I laughed. "No need. I didn't leave because of money, and I'm not going back for money either." Frank nodded, his smile full of approval. "Good, because we didn't bring you on to drown you in KPIs. We brought you here to rebuild human values, something companies like Onyx forgot long ago." I reopened my laptop, fingers resting lightly on the keyboard, heart at ease. Turns out, you don't always need a time machine to make things right. As long as you know you're worth more and refuse to compromise with what's wrong, you've already reversed the flow of your fate. 3 weeks after I left Onyx Freight, I walked into my new office at Crimson Haulage, more precisely, the Southwest Regional Coordination Center, where I was given the authority to rebuild everything from the ground up. No old chairs, no outdated systems, and definitely no leadership obsessed with key performance indicators. Here, I got to design the team structure, streamline logistics flow, and, best of all, choose who would walk this path with me. All 7 of them, Lena, Travis, Amanda, Cole, Sienna, Shane, and Devin, had passed Crimson's interviews with nearly perfect scores. After the hiring committee meeting, Frank Dalton called me into his office and said, "Brooklyn, I've never seen a group where each individual has such strong ability, yet works together like a team that's played together for a decade." I smiled. "That's because we actually did, at a place that never knew how to appreciate it." And so, we began. In the first week, Shane and I restructured the entire routing system. Amanda and Sienna took on customer service and supply chain problem solving. They were the same duo who had saved a major transportation deal from collapsing at Onyx just last year. Devin, quiet but precise like a Swiss watch, built a regional order automation model that within 10 days reduced manual processing by 40%. Travis and Cole didn't talk much. Instead, they spent their off minds rebuilding the customer database and creating real-time logistics dashboards. After just 1 month, Crimson Southwest Operations Center was running so smoothly that the tech department thought we'd brought in an outside consulting team to optimize everything. But we didn't. It was just 7 people who were once seen as replaceable, now proving the opposite, through action, not slogans. 3 months later, I presented our first quarter results in a strategy meeting with the executive board. The numbers silenced the entire room. A 31.4% increase in growth from the previous quarter. 3 major contracts won back from competitors. A 26% drop in operational costs. Delivery times improved by nearly 20%. Frank, seated at the head of the table, nodded slowly before turning to me. "Brooklyn, you and your team didn't just save this region, you just proved a truth many companies have forgotten. When you give people trust and ownership, they can do extraordinary things. I replied, sometimes all a team needs is a place that doesn't treat them like machines. That afternoon, when I returned to the office, all 7 of them were waiting with a huge cake. I froze. Written across the frosting in white was, "From the ashes, we rebuild." I stood still, overwhelmed, swallowing back tears. "Don't tell me you guys baked this?" I joked, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, we had it made," Cole replied. But the message was real. Lena stepped forward and handed me a small card. Inside, each of them had written a note of thanks, not just for leading them, but for never giving up. I looked at each face and realized real success isn't measured by how far you go. It's who walks beside you to the end of the road. The following week, I received an email from Crimson's legal department. The non-compete lawsuit filed by Onyx has been officially dismissed. Just one simple line, but it carried real weight. That same day, Amanda reported that one of the 3 major clients who used to work with Onyx had submitted a request to partner with Crimson on one condition: Brooklyn's team must handle the contract. I just smiled. Some wounds aren't healed by money. They're healed by recognition, second chances, and the right kindness at the right moment. And if anyone asked me what makes a team truly unstoppable, I'd answer simply, unwavering trust, even when everything else falls apart. One March morning, just as I was leaving a board meeting at Crimson, I received a message from Sienna. Onyx has officially lost the Wilson Group contract. They've moved everything to Crimson. Hernandez isn't renewing either. Did you hear? I looked at the screen. Just 3 short lines, but they carried the weight of an entire era ending. Wilson and Hernandez were 2 of the largest strategic clients of Onyx Freight. Back when I was there, my team was the one that built and maintained those contracts. One email, one meeting, one custom solution at a time. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt justified. A few days later, a small article appeared in Logistics Insider. Onyx Freight in talks to sell entire regional system for under 60% of last year's valuation. I shut my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Not even 6 months after I left, the dominoes had started to fall, and now the cracks had reached the foundation. A week later, a large envelope arrived at my office. The sender, Legal Department, Onyx Freight. I opened it carefully. Inside was a settlement agreement, accompanied by a formal written apology and a sizable financial offer. To avoid further legal action related to wrongful termination. I read every word. The language was carefully chosen, no extra phrasing, no full admission of guilt. But I knew this was the clearest acknowledgement they'd ever put in writing. I didn't respond right away. I forwarded the agreement to Crimson's legal team for review, then left the office. I needed time to think, not about the money, but the bigger question. Did I want this to be the final chapter? That evening, I sat alone on a wooden bench by Sloan Lake, where my dad used to take me fishing every weekend when I was little. The March wind was still cold, but the sky was strangely peaceful. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back to the screenshot of the termination email. The words still read, "We need people who prioritize work first." Once a cold slap in the face, now just faded pixels on a screen. I smiled quietly. There was no need to sue, no need to retaliate. I had already won, not in court, but in reality. The next day, I signed the settlement. Not for the compensation, but for one line in the final clause. Onyx Freight agrees to recognize Brooklyn Chase contributions during 2017-2023 as a key factor in the success of the Western Region system. That was all I needed. A truth, officially acknowledged. No one could take that away. 1 month later, Onyx Freight was officially acquired by Langford Global Transport, a cold, impersonal name interested only in what assets remained. A few warehouses, a couple of short-term contracts. And Martin Renshaw? I heard he was suspended right after the internal investigation. His job applications were rejected by 4 companies for organizational culture misalignment. A former colleague sent me a photo of my old office. Nameplate removed, desk empty, and a dried-out plant left behind. Unwatered, forgotten. When I told the team at Crimson, Travis just shrugged. Sometimes things don't collapse because they were attacked, but because they rotted from the inside. I didn't argue. He was right. We raised our glasses at our weekend dinner, not to celebrate Onyx's downfall, but to honor the fact that we chose to walk away before we got pulled down with it. I looked around the table, at the faces of people who stood by me in the storm, now glowing, confident, and rightfully rewarded. Lena was about to be promoted to Regional Associate Director. Amanda had just been recognized at the National Supply Chain Summit, and Crimson was opening 2 new coordination centers, one of which I'd personally oversee. Someone once said, "The sweetest revenge is quiet success." I believe something else. The greatest revenge is living a life they no longer have the power to define. 1 year after I first walked into Crimson College, during our second quarter strategy meeting, CEO Frank Dalton made an announcement that brought the entire room to its feet in applause. Brooklyn Chase is officially appointed Executive Vice President of the Southwest Region at Crimson, overseeing all operations, strategy, and workforce development. I stood up and gripped the microphone, not from nerves, but from emotion. From a cold termination email to the role of vice president at one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in America. It wasn't luck. It was the result of holding firm to who I was during the days when it felt like I had nothing left. After the meeting, Frank pulled me aside and gently patted my shoulder. "You've proven that doing the right, decent thing still has a place in this competitive world." I simply smiled. And it all starts with listening to people, not spreadsheets. My old team has now transformed too. Lena is now the Director of Process Development for the entire region, leading operational restructuring across 3 Western states. She used to be shy and hesitant to speak up, but now she runs meetings with major partners directly. Shane became the head of coordination technology, successfully designing Crimson's first self-learning AI routing system. Amanda just won Customer Service Specialist of the Year at the National Supply Chain Summit. She used to write customer emails for me when I was working late, and now she's creating the service standards for the entire network. Devin, Travis, Cole, and Sienna have all been promoted. Each one carries a piece of this journey. People, once underestimated, now leading the way in a place where no one doubts them anymore. One late afternoon in early fall, as I was about to leave the office, my assistant informed me that someone was waiting in the lobby. I stepped out. It was Paula Brennan, the former Western Regional Director of Onyx Freight. I paused for a moment, then walked toward her. She looked different. Grayer hair, a softer gaze, wearier but sincere. "Hello, Brooklyn. Thank you for agreeing to see me." I nodded and invited her into the small lounge next to the lobby. We sat across from each other. No coffee, no water. Just a real conversation after a year full of upheaval. "I owe you an apology," Paula began, "for letting things go too far, for staying silent when I should have spoken up." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "After Onyx collapsed, I stepped away from the industry for a while, but then I accepted an offer from an organization that consults on corporate culture, and I started to understand what I'd missed before. People aren't resources. They're the foundation." I looked at her. No bitterness remained, only acceptance. "I never waited for an apology from you, Paula, but I appreciate that you said this today." She nodded and pulled a small envelope from her coat pocket. "I wrote a few lines, not to justify myself, but for you to keep as a closed chapter." I took it, not opening it just yet. She stood and smiled softly. "You did something not many have the courage to do. Walk away when pushed out. And rise, without stepping on anyone to get there. I hope you keep building a place where others won't have to go through what you did." I stood too, offering my hand. Our hands met, not as superior and subordinate, but as two people who once collided at the wrong fork in the road. That weekend, I drove out of the city to the Colorado countryside where my father used to take me fishing when I was little. I stopped by the edge of Clearwater Creek. The water still rushed, the rocks still moss-covered like in the old days. I sat on the grass and opened the envelope Paula had given me. Inside was a handwritten note. No one is perfect, but some are brave enough not to continue being wrong. Thank you for helping me see that, Paula. I folded it, tucked it into my coat pocket, and gazed at the rushing stream. My dad once told me when I was just a scared little girl staring at the rapids, "You don't need to be stronger than the water. Just be steady like the rock. The water will flow around you." I whispered those words back, for the first time with absolute peace in my voice. Be the rock, steady in the current. And I knew. I was exactly where I was meant to be. 3 months after my meeting with Paula, I was invited to speak at a corporate culture event in San Diego, where hundreds of executives from logistics, tech, and supply chain companies across the U.S. gathered. I stepped onto the stage not as the woman who was unfairly fired, but as the executive vice president of the Southwest region at Crimson Haulage, the woman who helped turn a stagnant region into a shining growth engine. I looked out over the audience, attentive eyes, pens poised to take notes. I began with a question. How many of you have ever lost a job unfairly? A few hands went up. Some glanced at each other. I nodded gently. I have too, and what felt like the end turned out to be a beginning. I told my story not with bitterness or blame, but with a calm and honest voice. I spoke about the cold silence of a termination email, about former colleagues who stood by me on my worst days, about rebuilding from the ground up at Crimson. And the biggest lesson I learned? Don't let anger lead you. Let your values speak for you. When I finished, the entire room rose to a standing ovation. But what touched me most wasn't the applause. It was the quiet look from a young woman in the third row, her eyes wet, her hand over her heart. I knew that look. I once worn that look. The look of someone who's been hurt, but hasn't lost hope. After the event, she approached me. Her voice trembled. Thank you. I was just pushed out of my old company for reporting my manager's misconduct. I thought I wouldn't make it through. I placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't need to get revenge. Let your success make them take notice. And remember, when you hold on to your values, you'll find the place where you truly belong. A week later, I got word from the partnerships team. Crimson officially signed an exclusive supply deal with 3 major supermarket chains in the West, all of them former longtime clients of Onyx Freight. I didn't smirk with satisfaction, I just typed a short email to my team. We just hit a milestone that felt impossible last year, not to beat anyone, but to prove we can do the right thing and still win. Cole replied first. And we didn't have to step on anyone to get here. Travis added a quote. Want to know who's truly strong? Look at what they do when they're treated unfairly. Brooklyn chose to rebuild. That weekend, I came home early. No meetings, no reports, just a quiet afternoon. I wanted to sit alone in a familiar spot, the bank of the Little Bear River, where my father once taught me how to tie fishing knots and read the wind. I took off my shoes, letting my bare feet touch the cool earth. The water still rushed, colliding with rocks, then flowing on. It didn't stop, but it couldn't break the rocks either. I remembered what Dad used to say. You don't have to be stronger than the water. Just be steady like a rock. The water will learn to flow around you. I whispered, Dad, I get it now. The best revenge isn't making someone kneel. It's standing so strong they can't hurt you again. Closed my eyes, listening to the water's gentle murmur, the wind weaving through tall pines. No more anger, no more regret. Only gratitude for not breaking and for not striking back. I didn't destroy Onyx. I'd built something better, something that made their old ways obsolete. And that was the real victory. Brooklyn's story is living proof that in real life, staying true to your values and kindness is the strongest foundation you can have. Instead of retaliating or sinking into bitterness, she rebuilt from her pain, and the result was a brilliant career with a loyal team. She didn't need to destroy anyone. She simply chose to do better, live better, and that's what made those who once underestimated her irrelevant. A reminder: true success begins the moment you refuse to lose yourself. What do you think about Brooklyn's journey? Would you choose to rise the way she did if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about life and family.